My mother slapped my sister before she even finished saying she was pregnant. Not after. Not during an argument. Immediately. The entire restaurant heard it. Glasses stopped clinking. Forks froze midair. And my sister Lily just stood there holding her cheek. Like she'd expected it. If you're here with me, settle in for this one. Maybe grab something to drink. Because this story starts with one family falling apart in public. And ends with two families destroying themselves trying to keep a secret buried. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old. And 3 years ago, my parents threw my pregnant sister out of the family during an engagement dinner. The strange part? The pregnancy wasn't the real problem. The father was. But none of us knew that yet. The dinner was at a private steakhouse downtown. The kind of place my mother loved because everybody whispered instead of talked. Appearances mattered to the Bennetts. More than honesty. More than kindness. Lily arrived late. Rain on her coat. Mascara slightly smeared. Hands shaking just enough for me to notice. Mom noticed too. You could have at least made yourself presentable. That was her hello. Dinner dragged on. Fake laughter. Wine pouring. Then Lily set down her fork. I need to tell everyone something. The room shifted instantly. My father leaned back slowly. Even the waitress stopped moving. Lily inhaled once. Then said it. I'm pregnant. Silence. Cold silence. My mother stared at her for 3 seconds before asking, whose is it? Lily looked down. I can't say. The slap came hard enough to turn her face sideways. You selfish little idiot. Nobody defended her. Nobody. My father folded his napkin beside his plate. If you bring that shame into this family. He paused. Don't come back. Lily's breathing changed. Not embarrassment. Fear. Real fear. And suddenly I realized something. She wasn't hiding the father to protect herself. She was protecting him. I'm keeping the baby, she said quietly. My mother shoved Lily's purse against her chest. Then get out. I stood immediately. My father stopped me cold. If you leave with her, Claire. I turned around. You're choosing her over us. That was the moment I understood this was never about morality. It was about control. So I walked out with my sister. Into freezing rain. Into 3 years of silence. And into a secret that would eventually destroy my parents' reputation completely. Because 6 months later, I discovered the father was Pastor Raymond Cole's son. And suddenly everything made sense. The pastor had spent weeks publicly shaming fallen women during sermons. Meanwhile, his own son had gotten my sister pregnant. Lily moved into my apartment that same night. 1 backpack. 1 winter coat. And an ultrasound photo folded inside her pocket. That was all she had left. I made tea. She sat on my couch staring at the wall. You can stay as long as you need, I told her. She nodded quietly. Then whispered something I never forgot. If people find out who the father is. She swallowed hard. It'll ruin lives. Plural. Not life. Lives. The next morning my mother called. No apology. No concern. Just pressure. Bring your sister home before this becomes public. Public. That word told me everything. She's not apologizing for being pregnant, I said. She embarrassed this family. No, I replied. You embarrassed yourselves. Then came the threat. If you support her, don't expect help from us either. And just like that, I lost my family too. The following months were brutal. I worked extra shifts at the rehab clinic. Lily dealt with morning sickness alone. Church people whispered every time I entered a room. At Sunday service, Pastor Cole gave an entire sermon about young women destroying good families with selfish choices. Nobody said Lily's name. They didn't need to. My parents sat in the front row nodding the entire time. I walked out halfway through. But something bothered me. Pastor Cole didn't sound angry. He sounded nervous. Like a man protecting something. Then Lily collapsed in my bathroom during her 3rd trimester. High blood pressure. Emergency room. Doctors rushing around. I texted my mother. Lily's in the hospital. The message showed read 2 minutes later. No response. Not one word. That was when something inside me changed permanently. Because I realized my parents genuinely believed punishing her was justified. Micah was born 6 weeks later. Healthy. Dark eyes. Thick brown hair. And no grandparents waiting outside the delivery room. Just me. Life after that became survival. Bills. Diapers. Sleepless nights. But slowly something unexpected happened. People in town started noticing we weren't collapsing. We were rebuilding. That bothered my parents more than failure ever would have. Because suffering would have validated them. Healing made them look cruel. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I found a photograph hidden inside Lily's dresser. Lily standing beside a tall dark-haired man with his arm around her waist. And next to them, smiling at the camera, stood Pastor Raymond Cole. My stomach dropped instantly, because the man holding my sister was his son Ryan. That night I confronted her. The photo sat between us on the kitchen table. You had a baby with Pastor Cole's son? Lily closed her eyes slowly. I was going to tell you. Then she finally explained everything. She and Ryan had been together for nearly 2 years in secret. Not because Ryan was ashamed, because his father controlled everything. The church, Ryan's career, his future. When Lily got pregnant, Pastor Cole found out first. He took Ryan's phone, sent him to Chicago for work, told him Lily had moved on. And worst of all, he personally convinced my parents to throw her out to protect the family's reputation. Standing. Image. Always image. Then Lily told me the part that made me sick. Ryan still doesn't know he has a son. I stared at her. He thinks I left him. That wasn't manipulation anymore. That was theft. A stolen child. A stolen family. So I found Ryan myself. We met in a parking garage downtown. The second I told him he had a son, he sat down on the hood of his car and cried. Not quietly either. Completely broken. My God, he whispered. Then came the worst question. How old is he? Almost 2. That shattered him. Because he genuinely never knew. Pastor Cole had lied to him for years. Ryan drove back with me that same evening. Lily almost dropped Micah when she opened the apartment door. Neither of them spoke at first. Just stared at each other. 2 years of grief standing face to face. Then Ryan looked at the little boy in her arms and started crying again. Micah stared back curiously. Same eyes. Same jawline. The resemblance was brutal once you saw it. Ryan stepped closer carefully. Hi, buddy. Micah hit against Lily's shoulder. Reasonable. This was still a stranger. Then Ryan noticed a crayon drawing taped to the refrigerator. 3 stick figures. Mommy. Aunt Claire. Me. No father. Ryan stared at it for a long time before whispering. He drew a family around my absence. 3 nights later Pastor Cole showed up outside my apartment. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. Perfectly controlled panic. We need to handle this privately, he said immediately. That word again. Privately. People like him always confuse silence with morality. Ryan stepped into the hallway behind me. You lied to me. I protected you. You stole 2 years from me. Pastor Cole lowered his voice carefully. You're throwing your future away over a mistake. Micah was asleep 10 feet away while his grandfather called him a mistake. Ryan heard it too. And something changed in his face forever. No, he said quietly. You did. 3 days later my parents suddenly called asking to meet Micah. Not apologize. Meet him. After 2 years. And the reason was obvious. Church people had started asking questions. My mother arrived carrying a casserole dish. Of course she did. Emotional manipulation in ceramic form. The second Micah saw her he asked, Who's that? My mother looked devastated. Because her grandson didn't recognize her. Then Ryan walked into the apartment. The color drained from my father's face instantly. That's Raymond Cole's son. Not a question. A realization. Then Micah ran toward Ryan yelling, Daddy! The room froze. My mother looked physically sick. And Lily finally said the sentence she deserved to say for years. You threw me away before letting me explain who he was. Nobody had a defense for that. Not a believable one anyway. Then came another knock at the door. Pastor Cole. He'd come to stop the truth from spreading further. Too late. The second he walked inside and saw my parents, everything collapsed. My mother actually laughed. Sharp. Broken. You let me throw away my daughter while protecting your son. Pastor Cole tried defending himself. I was protecting both families. No, Ryan interrupted quietly. You were protecting yourself. Micah rested his head against Ryan's shoulder. Tiny gesture, but devastating. Because that little boy trusted the father he'd only recently met more than the grandparents who ignored him for 2 years. Then Lily stepped forward calmly. No yelling. No dramatic speech. Just truth. You told everyone I ruined lives, she said softly. But I was protecting your son the entire time. Nobody interrupted her. I loved him enough to disappear so he wouldn't lose everything. And all of you made me carry that alone. My mother cried. My father stared at the floor. And Pastor Cole finally whispered the saddest sentence in the world. I made mistakes. Ryan shook his head slowly. No. You made choices. That ended him. Not publicly. Quietly. Which was worse. Pastor Cole resigned from the church 3 months later. Officially, Pastor Bennett stepped away from the church for personal reasons. That was the statement people repeated in grocery store aisles and church parking lots. Careful. Polished. Sanitized. Unofficially. Everyone knew exactly why he disappeared. People in town had started connecting timelines. Asking questions. Remembering sermons that suddenly sounded uglier in hindsight. And once people stop protecting the illusion falls fast. Ryan moved back for good 2 months later. Not the dramatic movie version of coming home. Real life. Messy life. He learned how to install a car seat correctly after getting it wrong twice. Learned which grocery store stayed open latest when Lily ran out of diapers at 11:40 at night. Learned that toddlers wake up sick at the worst possible hours. And Lily watched all of it carefully. Not instantly forgiving. Not magically healed. Just watching to see if he would stay consistent when nobody was clapping for him anymore. Trust didn't come back in one emotional conversation. Came back slowly. In packed lunches. Shared rent payments. Doctor appointments. Quiet apologies repeated through actions instead of speeches. My parents spent the next year trying awkwardly to reconnect with Lily. Not dramatic apologies. Mostly stiff conversations. Careful visits. Birthday cards written 3 times before being mailed. Some damage heals clean. Other damage heals crooked. That's the real version nobody talks about. One afternoon I noticed a new crayon drawing taped to my refrigerator. 5 stick figures now. Mommy. Daddy. Me. Micah. And Aunt Claire. Still no grandparents. I remember catching my mother staring at that drawing one evening while Micah played on the floor nearby. She didn't complain about it. Didn't guilt anyone. Didn't ask why she wasn't included. She just stood there quietly looking at the paper like she finally understood what absence costs. For the first time in years, she looked smaller than her pride. Maybe that feeling was regret. Maybe it was growth. Honestly, sometimes the two look exactly the same at the beginning. Last winter I found the casserole dish my mother brought during that very first visit. Still sitting untouched in the back of my cabinet behind old coffee tins and expired tea boxes. Same chipped corner. Same faded floral pattern around the rim. I held it in my hands for a long minute longer than I expected to. Because for years that dish felt bigger than it really was. Like it represented every uncomfortable apology nobody knew how to say out loud. Then I placed it into a donation box by the front door. And I finally understood something that took me years to learn. Families are not the people who protect the image hardest. They're the people who stay after the image breaks. The people willing to sit inside the embarrassment, the consequences, the mess, without abandoning you to survive it alone. And the people who truly love you, the real ones, don't wait until loving you becomes socially convenient.